us a minute to figure it out. It's this is all new to me
I
too.
didn't,
So
I didn't know I had to go into post the link into my Safari, into my because it said post the link, and then I didn't know I had to go into Safari, because it kept saying, I kept hitting the link, and then I realized that I had to go into Safari and copy and post the link into my bar up on top.
yeah, that's the only downfall about using.
I
Yeah,
don't know what to do.
no worries. We figured it out. Yeah, that's the only downfall about this. It has to be on a specific browser, but we're here. We made it. So how the heck are you, Colleen? How are you dealing with the lockdown?
Oh my God, I'm good. I'm good. It took a while to get into this crazy routine. You know, like with stuff. So yeah, I mean, the kids are home. It's fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's like everybody else. I'm going a bit stir crazy. Um, I'm lucky to feel blessed that I can be at home. And I don't have to go out to work. So I feel lucky about that. But yeah, I think it's rough. I mean, but I'm not complaining. I mean, I feel like it's okay. Like I said, it for some, I had a, I suffer from anxiety, so I'm kind of like someone that needs a bit of routine in life. Like it took a while to get kind of the routine of school, home, and the homeschooling thing, but now I have a routine, so it's not bad, you know what I mean? So it's not too bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah. Like
So
yesterday, I was going a bit crazy. I was like, I need to get out of the house. So I went out and I did yard work for about 2 hours. I just like, thank God we're lucky here. We have a bit of land around free. So I went out in nature and I just like raked leaves in the ground and did some of that. That kind of made me feel better out of the house and stuff like that, because I need that. You know what I mean? Because I can't be in the house. I'll go crazy, So
yeah. So are you using your Wi-Fi at home, or are you using your cell phone service right now?
I'm using my Wi-Fi. Was it bad?
It just skips a little bit, but I think we're good. It's fine.
Let me move around. Let me see. I'll go into my kitchen.
Yeah, it might be.
Let's see if I can get it better.
Cool. So I have something I'm really curious about. So as a psychic medium, how do you feel during this time? Do you feel any connection to like the greater whatever? Like, I'm a Star Wars buff, and they talk about the Force. There's a disruption in the Force. So, like, is it like that? Can you feel a change since this has happened?
Yeah, I definitely have. I feel like things. I don't know. Really feel it's kind of like an awakening of sorts. I feel like a huge change in energy. Like I want to say that. Sorry, I'm holding my phone or not, because my stand that I usually use broke. So.
No worries, it's perfect.
Yeah, everything just falls apart, So yeah, I think that right now, what I'm feeling is I kind of almost feel like this. I don't want to say it was meant to happen, but I kind of feel like almost like we needed this. You know what I mean? Because I kind of feel like that it's kind of bringing us back inward and kind of like, appreciate life, more grateful right now. I think maybe got a bit out of hand life. I think maybe, like I think for all of us, maybe we're learning to be a bit more, spiritual and things like that. I think people have become very material in life and just crazy. You know what I mean? I think life in general has gotten really crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that in a way, that I mean, I kind of seen this coming, and kind of not that I predicted it. Believe me, I never would have seen this coming. But in a way, like I've seen, like with my reading, my connection with people over the last, I want to say about 3 years. I want to say a lot more people wanting to get out of the rat race. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
And definitely, I've seen a lot of people come to me and say, I want to get out of the rat race. I'm really sick of being stuck in traffic every day. I'm sick of not being able to spend time with my family. I'm really tired of working nonstop. I'm tired of being up to my eyes in debt. I'm tired of not having a life, like you know what I mean, like a, that has meaning, and I want to change this. And I think that that's kind of where people have, what life has become the norm for people. And I think in a way that this has kind of brought us back, is bringing us back to maybe where we should be. You know what I mean? Or appreciate that and see that maybe we can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
We can appreciate more. That's really what's more important, like, is family, friends and family, and health and happiness, and having each other. And I think that's really the most important thing right now. And surviving, you know what I mean? It's your fancy house, your fancy car, or how much money you have. It's really survival, and appreciating people too. That, you know, people are all about, like, who has the biggest job, biggest house, who has the biggest car, who has this, who has that, your vacation, that, your other, you know what I mean? Things people place so much importance on life, and now it doesn't mean that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The personal connections that you have mean much more than everything that's outside. You know,
the importance of being able to go outside and go for a walk.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. It's a weird time.
It is a weird time, but I think it's making us appreciate a lot more, and I think that's what I do, and I think it will change life. It will change life, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to jump right into kind of how you and I met, and kind of like what happened after that. So like I'll kind of start it up, you know, I say like 2.5, 3 years ago, you were on Paranormal Lockdown, and that was the first time I had ever heard of you. And after that, I contacted you to see if you would be interested in helping me with a project, specifically going to the American Stonehenge, and then later on we went to the Betty and Barney Hill abduction site. So yeah, the first time we met, I think it was at the American Stonehenge. You came out to help us out there. Can you talk a little bit about what we did? And yeah.
So interesting, because I had never been there before, and it's literally 15 minutes from my house. And I used to see it online stuff, and I mean, obviously I know of the Stonehenge in England, you know, and I'd seen America Stonehenge, and I used to say, like, America Stonehenge, what is America Stonehenge? And I had no idea what. But then when you asked me to go to America Stonehenge, I kind of thought, okay, well, I'll go see what it's all about. But it was so fascinating, so interesting. And when you asked me to check it out, but I had no idea how much history was there, and the energy that was there, which was amazing.
Yeah. For people who don't know, the American Stonehenge, I'm going to kind of give a brief history of what it is. The American Stonehenge is a location in Salem, New Hampshire, that was built possibly around 2,500 years ago, maybe even longer. People really aren't sure at this point when it was actually built. It has been kind of revamped over the years. There was a guy who bought it, I believe, in the early 1900s that did some changes. He moved some things around. So the actual authentic American Stonehenge has been changed, but the basic structure is still there. Essentially what it is kind of a center point where you would stand, and there are all these like lines that go off of that center point. And when the sun shines across one of those lines, it basically gives you the time of year. So with that said, I think it's kind of a magical place, because this place was definitely used for celebrations or ceremonies back in the day. And so it holds a lot of energy. And so that's why I wanted to bring Colleen out, because she definitely has a connection, you know, with the other side, if you will. And so, yeah, you came out there and you felt all kinds of weird stuff, right?
Yeah, it was amazing, the energy that was there, and the things that we picked up in the caverns that were there at the time. I remember one in specific that I walked into. That I got the scent. Do you remember the scent that I got? And I could smell this sweet scent that was there, and I felt that it may have been used for purposes. And there was so many different amazing energies. And I just, do you remember the sacrificial table
Oh yeah.
that
Yeah.
we, and there's the energy is so weird to walk down there, because it's not, when you, even though the ground is steady, you actually feel like that the energy makes you feel like you're on a boat. So you almost feel like you're going kind of off kilter, or you're kind of not steady when you're going down in the cavern. And then I felt when I went down to that particular area that a woman shouldn't have been down there, because wasn't it the shaman that was used to go down there?
Yes.
And yeah, I can't quite remember, but yeah, I almost felt like because that was so creepy for me, because when I did that, the pendulum work down there and started asking questions, and you went up to see what you could hear of, I could hear him saying to me, "Get out." Like I could actually hear, as I connected with the spirit of who was down there, somebody saying to me, "Get out." And that kind of was like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't be here. This is not where a woman should be. This is where men should be. The time that it was used, that's where just should be. And it was just so interesting. But yeah, you could definitely feel the people there. And also there was just a whole central point where we went up on the decking that they have now.
Mm-hmm.
I was drawn to the energy underneath, because something drawn me to go underneath that. And I felt that the ancient people would bring bodies of their loved ones who had crossed over, which was really odd. And I couldn't figure out why, that I could see that image of them bringing them out to the central point underneath that decking, which was seemed to be the center of all the points that were outwards, underneath on a slab. And we did find stone. Remember when we kind of dug around there?
Mm-hmm.
That bring them out to that point for like a like to be kind of taken. I don't know, really weird, like a area, like a central point. And that's where I'd kind of seen that image there. And then when we went down, we find like there was a lot of stone that was kind of covered underneath that area. But I'd love to go back there again. I definitely would. I never have been back there since, which is really weird. I always need to go back there.
Yeah, it's a really cool place. It's one of my favorite places here in the Northeast to go. It's got a great history to it, and it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, our second episode of Rogue Mysteries took us more into an investigation about Betty and Barney Hill. I decided to bring you on board because I thought that you might have the ability to kind of connect with something else. Because in the UFO world, there's this guy named Frank Sumption, and Frank built these ghost boxes that were actually designed to talk to aliens. And so that made me think that maybe there was a connection between the paranormal and the extraterrestrial. So I thought that you'd be a perfect person to bring on board and have you come out and kind of give us some insight about what happened there, and maybe even help us find the actual location where they were abducted. And you did that. You came out and you had all kinds of cool stuff to say.
Oh my God, that was the weirdest experience of my life. I have to say that, well, first of all, I've never done anything. I mean, as you know, I just, as psychic medium, just work mainly with clients. I mean, I've done paranormal investigations, and that was mainly my thing. So you really introduced me to a lot of very cool stuff.
Oh, nice.
Between America's Stonehenge, but the Betty and Barney Hill investigation, man, that was awesome. I mean, I have to say that was something I would love to do more with that. I always wish that we did more with and investigated even further. I have to say that was astounding. That blew my mind. I think that, I mean, when you called me and asked me to do that, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I really didn't even know what I was going to do, because I was like, well, what will I do when I get there? I'd never been there. I didn't even know where you were bringing me. And I didn't even know, like, well, how am I going to connect? What am I going to do when I get there? Like, so I just said, well, I'll wing it, like you know, that's kind of how I do it anyways. And I was like, well, I'll just wing it when I get there and see what happens. And then I went with you and Sarah, you know, that day, and we went all the way up to the White Mountains, and we went to all the different locations, and you guys shot different areas. And then that was like the last area we went to. And we were just driving and driving and driving. And I was just following the car. And then we got to that area. And it was like in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, wow, well, okay. And then you were just like, well, just tell me what, you know, like, tell me what you feel. And it was so weird because that's when I was like, all right, I'll just tune in and see what I start feeling or picking up. And my dowsing rods with me that day. And I started asking questions. But what really fascinated me about that area was how all of a sudden, because then, you know, as people know, like I am a medium, so I tune in, you know, I connect with loved ones who are crossed over, and I connect with spirits who are crossed over. What really astounded me that day was how Betty connected with me, and how she like took that opportunity to just like kind of jump on the chance to like, well, okay, so there's a medium here, and I'm going to just connect with her and start giving her information. And I kind of didn't even think of that, and I never even went in there thinking that I will try and connect with Betty and Barney. I didn't even think of that. I kind of went in there thinking that, well, I'll just, you know, sense the energy like we had at America Stonehenge. I thought it was kind of going to be the same idea, that I'll go in there and I'll just kind of see what I can feel in the area, you know, what you had said, like just wing it. We'll see what happens, see what you feel, that kind of, and exactly what we've done in America Stonehenge. But I never even thought that Betty would actually come forward and start kind of trying to make a connection and give me information or talk to me or show me things. And that was really amazing. Like how she, you know, kind of like when we went up that hill, like when I arrived, how she just kind of started bringing me up that hill and then kind of showing me where it had, where the craft had landed, which I was like, because she was like turning me around in all these different directions, which I thought was fascinating, because you had asked me like, well, can you ask her like where had the, you know, where and I, okay, and I kind of was like, I'm not like a skeptic, but like everybody else, like when it comes to aliens, you're kind of like, you know, kind of like, okay, you know, and you know, so I kind of was okay. So I was like asking questions with the dowsing rod, and we were at the top of the hill, and she pointed me all the way back down the hill, and then she had me turning around behind me. Do you remember? Like, and then I had to turn around, and she was like, turn around this way, and then turn around that way, and then she had me look up the hill, and then she was like there, and there was just this big mound,
Right.
Not like a mound of grassy hill, and she was like, there, that's it. And I was just like, okay, there it is, that's where she's pointing. And I was just basically telling you where she showed me, and that's where she said it was. And I didn't know that you had done research, right?
Yeah, a lot of research for sure. Yeah. So I just want to, I forgot to give people kind of the history of Betty and Barney Hill. Surprisingly enough, not everyone knows about the story. So I'm going to give kind of a brief history of it. So Betty and Barney Hill were a couple back in 1961. They were traveling down through Franconia Notch, heading back home. I believe they lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, if I wasn't mistaken. So like they were traveling through Franconia Notch after a vacation. They, saw something off in the distance. Betty Hill, and she thought it was a planet. She thought she was actually discovering a new planet, and all of a sudden this planet started moving around, right? And so once this planet started moving around, she kind of started to freak out a little bit, and they hopped back in their car. They started traveling down through Franconia Notch, and eventually this craft basically came around in front of them, cut them off, and then forcibly abducted them out of the car, and then took them onto the craft. While she was on the craft, she talks about basically Barney Hill, her husband, being taken off into another chamber or another room, and then she was brought into a different room, and they were both under this weird like hypnosis thing, a strange like state where they couldn't really interact with each other. And so eventually Betty Hill says that she was able to break through this trance and she was able to actually communicate with these aliens that had abducted her. She started a relationship, I guess you could say, kind of this verbal relationship with what she called the leader. And the leader gave her some really cool information. One of those bits of information was a star map of where these guys were from. And what was really cool is later on, Betty and Barney Hill went through some hypnosis. And during that hypnosis, she was able to recall that map. And she was able to draw it out. And then that map was given to a researcher. And that researcher actually matched up this map with Zeta Reticuli, a place where these creatures actually told her they were from. And what's really cool about that is I believe that that dude that from Area 51, I can't think of his name. They just did a documentary about him. He worked at Area 51 and he ended up like coming out and talking about things that happened there. He also said the aliens that they had at at Area 51 were from Zeta Reticuli. So those are two things I think was really interesting. And then also the Betty and Barney Hill story has one other fact that I think is really interesting because it kind of proves that something happened. So there's a air base called Pease Air Force Base in New Hampshire, and they said that they actually picked up a UFO the same day, time, and everything that Betty and Barney Hill claims that this took place. So at the end of the day, this really happened. What they experienced is their own experience. They've told the story and they believe this happened. But you know, at the end of the day, I don't know what they experienced, but they experienced something, and we experienced something as well when we were there. We were actually broke out the Frank box and started trying to communicate with something. And we got interaction. At one point, it said something about automobile. It was crazy. Like all the car alarms around us started going off when this box said automobile. So I don't really know really what happened or why all this happened, but it did happen. You know, and you had an experience there the first time we went, and you had believed that you saw an extraterrestrial off into the distance or just in the wood line, right? Or you sensed it maybe?
No, what happened was so she pointed where the skylight, that hill was, right? And then so then she said she wanted us to go up on the hill. So we went up on the hill. And then oh yeah, the other thing that was really bizarre, which I thought was she connected with Sarah. She said that she had something in common with Sarah. And she said she liked Sarah, and she told me, she said, I like Sarah, and she said, I have something in common with her. And I said, Sarah, she has something in common with you. That wasn't on tape, but because that was edited out, I think. But she said she had something in common with Sarah. I don't know if you remember that. And it turned out that Sarah was a lecturer or a teacher. And it turned out that Betty was a teacher. Was that correct?
Close. Sarah's a licensed clinical social worker, and so was Betty.
Yeah. So was Betty. I knew there was something they had in common. Yeah. And it was really weird because I didn't know that. And it was really weird because she said that she liked Betty, and she said, we have something in common. And I said, she just told me that you guys have something in common. And then I said, I couldn't figure out what it was. And then that's what we figured out, that was what they had in common, was they both had the same career, which was really bizarre. And then, so then she brought us up onto the hill. And what was really weird was that when we went up on the hill, we started asking her questions. She was talking so fast. She got so excited that she was answering the questions before I could even get the questions out. So when I would start to ask her the questions, she was answering them really fast. Like, she was super excited that she could finally talk to somebody. And I found it fascinating. And I was like, whoa, slow down. And I get that a lot sometimes, like when I do medium readings, when a spirit is so excited that they finally like have somebody that they can talk to, or they're connecting with a loved one on, from the physical world, that they finally have someone they can talk to. They're like, oh my God, yes, I can finally talk to someone and tell them my story. She was like that. But one thing that she did was she said that following her abduction, that they allowed her to now see, that when they allowed her to see crafts, you know what I mean, in the sense of, and I found this fascinating because I was just like like I was just the same as I do any medium reading. And I know there's going to be people who are going to listen to this who are going to say this is complete hogwash, this is nuts, whatever. I'm just telling you what I experienced and what I saw when I was there as a medium, just doing it like a regular medium reading, as I would do for any spirit that's crossed over. This is what she said. She said that she was allowed to see as an abductee, and she didn't like that word either, by the way. I don't know if you remember that.
A little bit.
For an abductee, she said, I'm not an abductee. She did not like that word. And I thought that was interesting because she said, when we asked her that, we said, how something about asked her, something about being an abductee? And she said, I'm not an abductee. So she did not like that word. She did not like to be called an abductee. And I don't know why that was, but she didn't like that word, to be called being abducted. And I don't know why that was, but she didn't like that, being called that.
I don't really know, but I do know that she had a really interesting, like, really a relationship with aliens, and she believed that she was able to even call them down later on in life. She would have these like gatherings where she would like summon crafts, and people say that they saw stuff, you know. So I think for her, she had a different relationship than being an abductee. She had more of almost like a friendship.
I think she saw it as almost like she didn't see it as a negative thing, which was really weird. She saw it more as an experience, I think. You know, and something that almost like she wanted to share and with people and let them know, like to teach people or tell people, more than a negative thing. And like so you were talking about what I saw. What was weird was what she showed me was, I didn't see anything, but what she showed me was when we were on that hill, was when she was talking about not wanting to be called an abductee. She said they let me see the crafts after I came back after they let me come back. So she said they're everywhere, we just don't see them, they're hidden. And then she said, for example, there's one right over there. And then she made my she made my dowsing rods point right over to an area that was right near us, which was just an area of trees. And it was really weird because right at the same time, after you posted the video, and you posted the video and you put out the show, there was a sound. Did you remember the sound? There was this crack. Yeah. And that's exactly where the interference came in, as she pointed over and she said, for example, and she said, there's one right there, you just can't see it. And she said, there's one right there. And I was like, really? And I immediately got this like crazy chills through my whole body as she made me point over and said, there's one right there and you can't see it, you guys can't see it. And I was like, it was the weirdest, it was just like, it was so bizarre to communicate with her like that and for her to say those things to me. And it was so mind-blowing, you know, because it was just crazy, you know. But yeah, she said there's
yeah, this is just something you've never really dealt with before, so I can understand why it would be kind of overwhelming and really not understand exactly what you're interpreting, because that's part of what you do, right? You get these like messages and then you have to interpret them, right?
My job is, as a medium, is to communicate with loved ones who crossed over, which is just loved ones, you know, who are people who have died and have crossed over. And that's just what I normally do. I help people communicate with their loved ones who have crossed over. So she's just a regular person who had this experience, who crossed over. And I was just communicating with her like that. But obviously she had this crazy experience. And so I was just communicating with her like that. But to get this information from her and for her to tell me all this information while we were there was just something I had never experienced before in my entire life. I mean, I literally went into it blind. Like, you brought me up there. It was, I had no idea that that's what was going to happen. And yeah, I mean, I walked away from that just mind blown. And you know what fascinated me too was that Barney, never came forward through the whole thing. He never, ever, because, and it happens a lot in readings too, where you have a couple, you know, a husband and a wife, and there'll always be one that's very chatty and one that's very quiet, and one will stand back and one will come forward. But I found that he didn't, you know, obviously she's the very, you know, and obviously like we know from the story, and I don't know if other people know the story, but she did become aggressive when she was being abducted and punch, you know, that's part of the story, punch the alien. But and he was terrified. But I believe that, you know, that was another reason why he didn't come forward, because even as any spirit does, you know, there's always one person in a couple where one will be a little bit more outgoing, and the personality of a person who's crossed over, as I tell everybody when I do readings, your personality in the spirit world is the same as it is in the physical world. So if you're a very shy person or a very introverted person, when you cross over, your spirit's going to be the same, you know. So if you're very chatty or extroverted, when you cross over, if someone tries to connect with you, you're going to be the same personality. You're not going to suddenly change. So her personality is going to be the exact same on the other side. If Barney was a very introverted person like that, then he's going to be the same. Obviously, she was a more aggressive, outgoing person, so that's why she came through the way she did. He didn't come through at all. And obviously, you know, because I afterwards, after all this happened, of course, I went afterwards and I started looking up stuff on YouTube and reading stories and everything, because now I'm totally interested in the whole thing, and I'm going, this is a fascinating story. So I started to read more about it, and I was amazed by it. And I learned more about Barney to find out that he was, you know, afterwards, that he was more introverted and he was scared. And she was the one that wanted to tell the story and all of that afterwards. So I
Yeah.
can definitely see the difference in the personalities and why he didn't come forward. You
Right.
know?
So I want to move on to the third episode, and you know what I'm going to be asking you, because that was wild. That was like, I think it's important. You know, I think it's really important, Colleen, because you definitely
It is.
um,
Yeah.
you were affected by that. You
Yeah.
had some things happen when you got home, and those things have, I think, changed who you are. I think that the experiences that you had really changed the dynamic of your life. I think that, you know, you dealt with a lot of like adversity after that. I know that you had some health issues, and by the way, you look great. Looks like you been working on yourself, and you look super healthy. I'm proud of you. And so, and yeah, so you dealt with a lot of things after that that I think kind of like forced your life in a direction that you weren't really planning on. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I know that it's really hard for you to talk about this because it was an experience that really did affect you, but I'd like to talk about it some if it's okay. So when you got home from that investigation, can you tell everybody a little bit about what happened that night?
Yeah. Well, it was a long drive home because I think we were about 3 hours from my house, two
Mm,
and a half 3 hours. So I think, yeah. So I was exhausted because I decided like I was going to stop off and eat or something on the way home, but then I just figured, because I think it was getting dark, or
yeah.
getting, we finished up there, and we've been going all day. And at that point, I just said, you know, I'm just going to go straight home. I'm tired. I'm just going to go straight home. And I just decided to drive all the way home, which I did. And I got home and I was tired. So I had something to eat. And I was just kind of going through everything in my head and just kind of like, oh my God, this is insane. I can't believe this happened, blah, 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 blah. And usually, like, you know, after doing any investigation, um, and I honestly can't remember if I usually shut myself down. I usually, you know, after any reading or after any investigation, you know, I do cleanse myself, shut myself down, and all of that. And I'm sure I did the same thing. Honestly, can't remember, Bill, but I'm sure I did. I usually sage, I do all that stuff, which I probably did when I came home. I can't honestly remember, but I know I'm sure I told my husband everything that happened. He went to bed. I stayed up on the couch and I was just trying to go through everything in my head. And I'm sure I had photographs I was probably going through and videos I was probably going through that I took that day. And I fell asleep on the couch. And I suddenly woke up, and now I get lucid dreams. I've had them since I was a kid. And I don't know if people know what lucid dreams are. I dream a lot. I've always had psychic dreams and lucid dreams since I was a kid, which lucid dreaming means that when you have dreams, they seem real, and when you're in them, they seem real. But I know the difference. Let me tell you, I've had them since I was a kid. I know what they are. I know my psychic dreams are. I know all about this. I've had all of this stuff since I was a kid. I know what's real and I know what's not. So let's just clear that up straight off the bat, okay? And so I've had all these experiences. I've had all these things happen to me since I was a child. I've had psychic dreams, lucid dreaming. People out there that have had all these experiences will know exactly what that's about, especially if you're a medium, especially if you're a psychic, especially if you're intuitive or sensitive or empathic or any of that stuff. Well, what I experienced was, so I was in my living room, which is right over here, and I woke up. Like I just woke up suddenly. I looked up and again, I don't know. I can't explain if it's real or not, or what I saw was real or not, but I saw what I thought were not real people. I'll say aliens, whatever you want to talk about it, but they seem to be in my living room, just standing there. I just froze. I just was sitting on my couch. It wasn't one, it was a load of them. And I'm talking about a room full. And there was no sound. There was nothing. There was literally, I can't even, it was just like a room full. I mean, just like standing, staring at me. And it was like, so I kind of like was like, am I dreaming? Is this real? Is this not real? But I was like, kind of like, am I awake? Am I not awake? Like, is this really happening? And I kind of like started to freak out. And I literally, like, I jumped up. It was still there, nothing big, and I just freaked out completely, because to me, it was all I can say. To me, it was as real as real. I could see it as clear as day. It was real. And I just freaked out and I ran out of the house screaming.
Yeah. And then you called me, right?
I grabbed my phone. I ran out of my house onto my back deck. I had a major panic attack, and just was like, this is not happening to me right now. I'm not seeing this. This is real. This is not. And like, I was just freaking out. And I called you. I got your voicemail. I left a crazy voicemail to you because I was so freaking out. I didn't get you. Then I came back in. I was terrified to come back in. Finally, I came back in after I thought, I was so scared to come back in. When I finally came back in, I ran upstairs, woke up my husband, screaming at my husband, terrified, telling him trying to tell him what had happened or what I'd seen. He said, and I'll quote him, he said he'd never seen me so scared in his whole entire life. Wow. So he said, he said to me, he didn't even know why I was scared or why I was freaking out, but he said, I've never seen you so scared in your entire, he said, I had never seen you so scared. And he was like, what? And I was trying to explain to him what happened, and I couldn't. And he was just like, I was just like, I can't. So I was so terrified I wouldn't even go back downstairs. So finally I got him, he went back downstairs. He was like, there's nothing there. And I was like, I'm telling you, there was something there. So I to this day, I don't know what it was. I don't know what I saw. And then we talked about it afterwards, and I don't know, was it something that, I was still connecting with Betty? Was the door still open? Was she showing me what she saw? Was it something else that I picked up from the site? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
I want to back up a little bit. I want to know a little bit about, I guess, a little bit more about that dream, and what the aliens looked like, what they were doing. Did they feel threatening? Did it feel like
Oh,
they were there to take you? Maybe like first off, what did they look like?
just like I want to say like kind of human, like not not like half human, kind of. You know what I mean? Like not not scary, not super scary, like not like to the point of just God, I can't even. It's so hard to describe. They had like boiler suits on, different colors though, all different colors, like different colors. So they had like different. They had like suit, like they all I can say is they look like boiler suits, but they were all different. They had different colors on. Different ones had different colors. It sounds crazy, I know. Oh my
No, no,
God, it
no.
feels.
I don't think it does sound crazy. So it, I don't.
But they didn't. I can't. It's because it's almost like I want to say half human, half not. You know what I mean? Like kind of like uh yeah, like kind of like your typical, but not typical. You know what I mean? A mixture. Do you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think
Like
that.
not like the body would be. I would describe as a normal body type for a normal human being. Not like anything unusual. Like not like I would describe it more as a smaller frame, like a smaller, say, male frame. You know what I'm saying? Like I would say, like if you would describe a smaller male frame, you know what I mean? Like say 5 foot, like if you were about a smaller man's frame, like something like 5'8", maybe 5'9", like a smaller man's frame, that kind of a frame,
Hmm.
not like a big frame, not tall, not super tall, but just like a smaller man's frame.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were all the same. They were all the same height. All of them with the same height.
That's interesting. So I don't think that
All
the I don't think
They were all the
the
same height,
description that
all
you
three.
gave a minute ago about them being I don't think the description you gave a minute ago about them like wearing almost like boiler suits or to me a flight suit that are all different colors. I think that's interesting because if you think about it, if everyone wore a different color, each color could signify some other role that they play within their group. So it would be an easy way to
Yeah,
identify what role they played just by a
different
visual
colors.
observation. So, what you're saying makes a lot of sense because a lot of people talk about these creatures not really using verbal expressions. They don't really speak per se. They do more of a
No,
mind.
they didn't.
They're more of more of like a telepathic type creature. So what you're saying really is it's kind of cool because I can see how that would work. I can see how like having a visual aid to understand what role that creature played would be a way to tell them apart. And so did you feel threatened at any point during the stream?
Um, not. God, I think I was just scared. I think I just felt. I just because I think nothing was said. It was just kind of like they were just standing there. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like they were just standing there and staring at me, and it was kind of like they were all just there was just so many of them, and I think that's why I felt threatened because it wasn't like one, it was just so many of them,
Hmm.
and just standing there, and just them and me, and that's what scared me was there was so many of them, and there was no communication. It was just they were just standing there, and that's what scared me, and that's why I ran because I was like, because it's not like me, because I'm not usually a scared person. I'm not someone that's like a, like I'm very much into, like even like on doing, investigations or doing, haunted investigations and stuff. I'm not someone that's a runner. You know what I mean? I'm not that person. I don't know. It was kind of like a flight thing I did. I don't know. It was like I just got scared. I think it was because I just didn't know. I think it was just something that it was just it was the silence. I think it was just there was silence. And that's what scared me. It was silence, and it was just standing staring. And that was just like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And that's what scared the crap out of me. And that's what made me run. And then that was it. That was just like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And I didn't feel threatened any other way. I just think it's so scary to me.
Right.
And that's kind of what really, yeah.
Huh, that's
you know,
cool. So
it was just weird. Yeah.
Yeah, so you basically didn't want to do the last episode because you had to face all this stuff. So what you experienced, has that affected you today, and how?
There's really bad interference on your end. Can you hear the interference, or is it just me?
I think it might be on your end, but I'm not really sure. Yeah, so the experience that you had, has that affected you long term?
I can't, hold on. It's jumping.
Yeah. Yeah,
Did
mine.
it affect? Well,
yeah, so let's just we could try to wrap this up pretty quick, and just because we're having some technical issues. Did that experience affect you long term?
I don't know. I think it shook me up. I'll be honest. Yeah, it definitely shook me up, because I think I met with you. I met with you. I don't know how after I met with you to talk to you. So I can't remember how long after we met and talked about it. Yeah, it definitely did shake me up. But what happened the next day after that is I went on an investigation and on the USS Salem, and which was a bad idea, because I think I was so shaken from what happened that day. Maybe I'm on that's my daughter.
Hey.
Maybe I'm my daughter. So yeah. What happened was I was so shaken up from that, and then the next day I went on an investigation on the USS Salem, and I ended up getting an attachment on the USS Salem. So I think that between that and the and I had never gotten an attachment before, and then between that and the USS Salem, I don't know if they connected in any way, but everything went downhill from there for me. and things got really bad. So I can't pinpoint whether one had anything to do with the other, or, you know what I'm saying, if one led into the other. I mean, whether my attachment on the USS Salem was because I was weaker because of what happened with my investigation of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction, and being there all that day, and what happened that night before I went to the USS Salem. And I think I probably shouldn't have gone to the USS Salem, because maybe I definitely wasn't up to par, maybe. And I definitely, as strong as I should have been, you know what I mean? Normally I have my guard up, and normally I'm all prepared and everything. But I did an all day, all night investigation. And then I got an attack, I had on the USS Salem, I ended up running off that ship home, and it just was a nightmare, Bill. I can't even tell you. I mean, and then it just went downhill the next couple of years. I mean, I've had and my health issues, I think are completely something separate. I mean, I had them anyways, obviously, but mentally, physically, everything has just been a mess the last couple of years. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, it kind of all started then. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had a bunch of issues as well. Without getting too deep into it. Yeah, but I went through some like depression and stuff after that. Like, I always think that day affected a lot of us in our daily lives, and really changed who we are, and it definitely affected me. It caused me to like I said, have some depression issues, and I had a bunch of other stuff happen, and I ended up like losing a ton of weight. Like I ended up like just doing all these things because I think that I was feeling like I was losing control in my life. And so I was doing all these other things to gain control, you know? So I think that day affected a lot of us in a lot of different ways, you know? And so I don't understand it to this day, but I know that something happened at that site that affected us, and not just me. It affected a lot of us on the set for a long time, you know. So I don't know.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that. See, that's interesting. I never actually thought that it had anything to do with that site or anything connected to that. It never, but it's actually, it kind of like, um, it all goes back to that time where everything went from that period, kind of went downhill from there for me. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
everything did get kind of really pinpointed. I kind of went back to, like, cause that, and then the USS Salem. And then after that, everything was crazy. You know what I mean? Yeah, I just like, it's kind of just now that I'm kind of getting my life back together again and everything's kind of getting normal again. I mean, I had 2 major surgeries in the last 2 years. And now my health is better and I'm feeling better and mentally feeling better, physically feeling better, and everything is kind of getting back to normal, as you want to say, touch wood.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you
But
look
yeah,
great. Well, you definitely look great. You look
you
like
kind of don't.
you look healthy, you know, and so I'm happy for that. I'm happy you have your health back and you're getting pointed in the right direction. But so what are you doing these days? Like, do you do any kind of like, are you on tour basically going to like cons, or what are you doing these days?
What am I doing, like, for my job and stuff? I'm just like, well, I'm just doing readings. You know what I mean? I'm doing private readings and stuff right now. And I had something that was supposed to come up, but then it got, something, a big thing that was supposed to come up, it got postponed, you know, because of the virus. So hopefully that will come up once this all settles down. Hopefully. Yeah, so just, doing my usual thing, kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
staying low key. Like I said, I had health first. That was kind of what I've kind of focused on, because I was kind of doing a lot and putting my health second and all of that. And I in hand and decided that, I had to put my health first. And that was kind of like the most important thing that I decided to do in the last couple of years, especially in the last year. And That's what I've decided. I just kind of decided to do that, but my health was the most important, and I really had to take care of myself. And that's what I'm doing right now, like I said. And I feel so much better for it. You know what I mean? Like I said, mentally, physically, everything. And I think that's something that you finally realize, like, put everybody else first, and um, put yourself kind of second. And uh, work and everything else, it doesn't work after a while. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. So
Kind of have to
we're almost at our one
realize,
hour mark,
it's
and that we're almost at our 1 hour mark, and that'll be the end of our little show here. But I want everyone to know how to get a hold of you, because I think you're an amazing psychic medium. I think that you definitely have talents. I've experienced myself. You've given me tarot readings that were really accurate. You've told me other things that were just so true. So anyone out there that is interested in getting a psychic reading, how can they do that?
I'm you know me, I'm all over social media. So yeah, you can read line. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Colleen Costello, the Celtic medium. That's what I'm called now. I have a Facebook page that's on that. You can just I freely give out my phone number. 603 508 2475. You can text me or call me if you'd like a reading. Right now, obviously, with the virus, doing phone for now. I'm not doing readings in person. I was, but I stopped doing those in-person readings. I do gallery readings too normally. I do gallery mediumship readings, but again, I'm not doing those right now because of the virus. But hopefully we'll get back to all of that eventually, but I'm not going to stress about it. I believe everything that's meant to happen happens, and just taking one day at a time. That's all you can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is just like I said, get through this. We'll get through this, and I believe we'll all end up where we're meant to end up, and in the right place, and we just got to get through this one day at a time and try and not stress too much. It's hard. It's hard. It definitely is hard. But you know what? Like, I always try and think every day is just like figure out that we're worse off than we are. So yeah, I try my best, be grateful every day for what I have, and when I get stressed, I say, okay, there's always somebody that's in a worse situation than I am, and then that feels better.
Yeah,
So
definitely. But all right, well,
glad to see that.
we reached the 1 hour mark, so we're gonna hop off here. But again, I appreciate you hanging out with me, Colleen, and it's always a joy to talk to you. You're full of knowledge and full of interesting stuff. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is fun. I'm glad you did this.
Yeah, definitely. We should do it more often for sure. All right, cool. Well, we are out of here, guys, and thanks again for hanging out here on Operation Lockdown Videocast. And we are going to keep doing this as long as we're locked down. So be sure to come back every day at noon, and I'll have a different guest. Yeah, tomorrow I think we are going to have Carl Johnson. Carl Johnson was one of the original investigators of the Conjuring House. He was there when he was 17 years old, and he's been doing this a long time. So I'm excited to talk to Carl tomorrow. He'll be an interesting guest. So hopefully you can join us, Colleen, and listen along. Cool. We'll see everybody next time.
Thanks. Everyone, stay safe, Bill.